So, Mark, Rob. In fact, Mark, we're joined by someone who we're not normally joined by. It's normally just you and I. It feels like we've been kind of taken over by someone else.
An interloper. I'm definitely not taking over. You're in control.
It's
You
nice.
can take
It's
over.
nice.
It's fine.
It's nice to finally have somebody on the vlog who's got a good head of hair on them, Rob.
I, I don't have a lot to talk about, but I can
Looking
talk about
looking sharp there, man.
well, give it a couple more weeks. I'll be looking for a barber.
Thanks for coming on, Rob. Appreciate that. The reason, in fact, quickly, Rob, probably worth just giving a quick introduction to yourself, really, for people who aren't, the very few people who don't know who you are.
Well, run a consultancy business called Alchemetrics, which is about trying to make change happen in businesses, improve their growth, moving more into doing a lot of innovation work. I've worked with you, Mark, and both Marks actually in the past on various projects. Fairly well known around the Northamptonshire area. Had a bit of involvement both with small businesses, FSB and Chamber, but also with the local authorities. Last couple of years, been doing a lot of work with business improvement districts. So particularly interested in what's happening with town centres, which I think basically is going to be carnage after this COVID process is over. It was pretty tough before, but it's going to be awful, I think. And I'm not a fairly optimistic person normally, but I think I do have a degree of pessimism about where some businesses are going in the future. But yeah, happy to talk about it.
I suppose that leads into what we're going to have a chat about, really, because I know after Mark and my podcast last week, which was talking about how to work effectively from home, on the LinkedIn chat, you both got into a bit of a discussion about how the government's supporting small businesses, and we're all running small businesses, and you both had a lot to say on that, and I've got a fair bit to say, so we could be here for a long time, but we'll try and condense it if we can. So, Mark, you kind of waded in first, so what's your general feelings about how the government's looking after or not looking after small businesses?
Well, look at the state of your walls, Mark. You know, if you want an indication of where small businesses are, no, you've been stripping wallpaper. It's not that bad, is it?
It's not that bad, no. Thank
No,
you.
I think the point that we'd started discussing a little while ago was that the government seems to be giving small limited companies absolutely no help whatsoever. So it feels like a very uneven playing field in that furloughed employees can take off with, what is it, about £2,500, I think, of salary a month if their employers choose to do so. But if you're the director of a limited company and you're drawing a small salary and also getting some of your payments through the dividends process, you've basically been abandoned. You're getting no help whatsoever. So we don't have a choice. I mean, I think all three of us are lucky insofar as it seems that our businesses can continue to function and carry on working during the COVID-19 situation. But I'm sure there are a lot of people who aren't in that scenario, and it means that their income has been completely stopped. They're not really getting any help from the government. I keep mentioning the Federation of Small Businesses, who I think are making noises in the background and trying to help with this particular area. I haven't heard an awful lot directly back from them on that front, but it just makes one wonder that, okay, we can manage this for a month. I'm in a relatively good situation where I'm still quite busy. I'm still working. I can see myself continuing almost on a normal basis, but it does feel as though that there are a lot of people out there who are, quite rightly getting support and help. I think that they well deserve, but for my business, and I'm guessing for you guys as well, there's nothing out there.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with a lot of what Mark says. I mean, I think I would, because of some of my public service background, maybe give some context to that. So I think what we're looking at is a remarkable attempt by the government to shore up an economy that's been frankly cut off at the knees. It's very unusual in any crisis situation that actually the economy just stops like a tap being turned off. And I think to actually pile in the amount of money they are trying to pile in is credit to them. I think in that process and the speed at what they're working, without being an apologist for that, there will always be gaps. But this is the big gap, I think. There is an element for me around the limited companies where a director is basically paying maybe a low PAYE salary, but then bounced up by dividends. And it seems to be, there's two issues really. One, it's not covered systemically within the operating systems that HMRC have. It's not easy to find businesses like ours and recognise them and recognise the value. So eligibility and process is a bit of an issue. And there's this thing around viability, but there's definitely an underlying feel that these are businesses that either have done well and squirreled money away or can continue to do well and therefore seem to need less support. And frankly, I think the real issue is by the time somebody comes up with a solution, we'll probably be back to whatever normal looks like in the next 3 weeks. Because I think it would be June before, at the very earliest, without a system that can adequately manage how you work out what people should be paid, what 80% of your dividend level is, up to a level of, let's say, 2,500. There's no easy way of doing that in HMRC. So there's 750,000 businesses in this gap. That's quite a lot of businesses out of 5.2 million, I think, in the UK. It's a pretty large chunk.
Yeah, it's also that desire to want to carry on working. I think I've said to a lot of people recently, I feel genuinely grateful to be working at the moment because I know people that aren't. I also know people in marketing who have lost their businesses overnight, or they've got to that stage where their order book, if you like, or their the next 6 months worth of work has just disappeared, or it's been put on hold indefinitely with no idea if it will come back. So I feel very lucky to still be working, really. But yeah, it's whether or not there are people in our position, being devil's advocate, who probably could carry on working, but perhaps don't want to. I think if you make that decision and you do what many of us do as small limited company owners, as Rob has mentioned, paying yourself a small wage and topping it with dividends, you have to accept the fact that you're not going to get the support from the government you need. I guess if your business is pretty healthy cash flow wise, that's a decision on your part. If you can continue, you can keep yourself going through this period. I think there's nothing wrong in that.
But here's the thing, guys. I've seen representatives of the government talking about this on TV, and they start making noises about like, oh yeah, well the small limited company directors are obviously doing pretty well, and when this is all over, we need to sort of review about how much tax they're paying, and let's get them paying more tax. That's crazy nonsense. I've been an employee in organizations. I've been running my own business. The tax differential, as far as I'm concerned, is barely separated from, as I say, working as part of a big corporation. But not only that, we're being treated in some corners as though we're pulling a fast one, that this is some kind of tax dodge No, if you are not in this situation, if you are not a limited company director, believe you me, this is what our accountants tell us that we should do. We haven't fixed the system somehow. So we're playing by the rules. We're doing everything that we should be, exactly the same as anyone else or any other kind of organization out there. So we're paying our dues. We are not being taxed, well, certainly in my situation, barely differently from any other type of organization. All we're finding is that we are getting less, if no support from the government during what's a very difficult time for the sector. And, the point that you were making, Mark, about maybe there are some people who are choosing not to work, that could well be the case. But I think certainly in my circumstance, you're being given a choice of two options. You either completely stop work and don't do anything, and if you do so, you may then be able to gain some kind of assistance, or maybe more likely your trading is going to see a little bit of a downturn because, of course, all the companies that we supply and work with are going to be furloughed or on hiatus.
Yep.
Now, that seems to me, once again, a slightly crazy situation, because if you want to try and encourage Britain to be entrepreneurial and to work hard and to try and make its way through this current crisis, why not offer a little bit of assistance if you see a slight downturn in profits, rather than say, no, you got two options. You either completely stop or you carry on with absolutely no help whatsoever.
Interestingly, the FSB, one of their solutions has been just pay a flat rate to every business that's registered. If your company's house or you're VAT registered, you get an amount of money, maybe dependent on turnover, nothing else. And you can say, this is my turnover, there's an amount of money. Now that's just cuts all the process systems out. Not quite sure how they get the money to you, because again, they don't always have your bank account, so it might have to be a check in the post, etc. But there are ways of doing it. I think the question is, will Rishi Sunak come out and say, yep, we're going to fill this gap?
I think that you hit the nail on the head earlier, though, Rob, when you said it's time's running out. Really, I think we've seen how long it's taken to get the other, quite understandably, to get the other systems in place because they've never done it before. If they come into this now and say, okay, we want to help out you guys, how long is it going to take to get that system set up? By the time that's done, we're going to be out of this. We're not completely out of it, but certainly towards the back end. The idea that with all these people on furlough, a lot of people investing time in their own little projects and things, and probably getting a little bit inspired to do their own thing, there is a distinct chance that off the back of this, we may see that. Is it 750,000, Rob? Of those smaller. We may see more of those types of businesses, like the one I've developed, the one Mark's developed, and yourself, Rob. That we may see more of those emerge potentially.
I think you're right, Mark. There will be a lot more businesses, one-man bands, smaller organisations, remote working. There's no way that we're coming out of the other side of this crisis without society and business changing in some shape or form.
Mark, what do you think the world will look like business-wise after lockdown?
I think there's going to be survival of the fittest. I think a lot of businesses are going to fall by the wayside. I think, clearly we're seeing this already. Unemployment and business collapse is going to be high. We're going to get to a very strange place in probably about 2, maybe 3 months at most time, where businesses are going to start going into this partial reopening phase. So how do you partially reopen a restaurant? How do you partially reopen a cinema? How do you so many businesses are going to face the dilemma of how do I open, but at the same time remain safe and keep people, 2 meters apart from each other. It's going to be a very, very strange environment. Even once we get to that phase, a lot of consumers are going to become so used to ordering online. A lot of employees are going to be so familiar with working remotely that they're either not going to want to go back to their offices, or they're not going to be invited by bosses, as Rob says, back to their offices. This is going to be a sea change of how we work and operate. There's been a lot of good stuff coming out of this as well. A lot of people helping, a lot of people volunteering. Britain at its best in many cases, showing what a good job we can do when we all pull together. So we need to see more of that. Less nitpicking, less taxing people who don't deserve to be taxed and pulled apart so heavily, and onwards and upwards is all I can say.
But I hope you're right. When we come out of it, we'll have a new world order rather than a new normal, because I don't think it will be normal. What's going to be fascinating is to see what that looks like for both big business, small business, and everything in between. There's always opportunities in change, but it's trying to identify the ones that you can grasp when you come out of the back end of this, which hopefully won't be too long.
Well, when we get to that stage, let's meet up again on here. Maybe with a coffee that time, because it might be early in the morning.
It's a bit early in the morning, please.
I always write better when I'm drinking. But other than that, guys, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure. Stay home. Let's all wash our hands. Look after yourselves. Cheers.
Don't touch your faces. Cheers.
All the best. Thanks, guys.